Hey everybody, today we are going to teach you how to make this cute little fish car freshie made using our little aroma beads. We've got 3 different colors here, so we're going to have to mix up our aroma beads so that we can make sure that we get all the colors that we need in the fish. First thing that we're going to do, we're going to get our scale, and we like to use these plastic tubs to mix the aroma beads in. I like them because you can put a lid on top of them, so it makes it really easy to shake them up. This plastic, it's a number 5 plastic, if you can see right there on the bottom. This type of plastic will not melt from any of the fragrance oils or anything, so it's the perfect type of plastic to use for this. So I'm going to turn on my scale, and we're going to let that hit 0. And I'm not looking to make just a huge batch of these aroma beads or anything. We're just going to do 4 ounces at a time for each color. So I've got my scale set to ounces, and I'm going to add my aroma beads here. Okay, so I have exactly 4 ounces of the aroma beads measured out. You're going to want to make sure that you measure out your aroma beads and your fragrance by weight. So now that I've got the 4 ounces of beads, I need to add my fragrance oil. And today we're going to be using one of our new fragrances. This is Desperado from our Outlaw collection. This is a really great masculine fragrance, and we're hoping that these little fish freshies will be great little gifts for Father's Day. So that's why we're going with the masculine fragrance. I'm going to measure out, I'm going to do this at 6%, which is going to be 1/4 of an ounce of the fragrance. Okay, so that is exactly 0.25 ounces. And then the first color that we're going to use is going to be that green color that you saw in the fish, and that's going to be using our Bayberry Eucalyptus liquid dye. Because I'm using so few beads, it is not going to take a whole lot of the dye to get the color that we're wanting. So I am just going to do 1 little bitty drop of the liquid dye. So just 1 tiny little drop, if it'll come off. There we go. That is all we're going to need. And then I'm just going to put the lid on. Make sure it's on there really good and tight, because you don't want these beads and the fragrance and the dye to go flinging everywhere. And we're just going to shake it up. You can see the color's already starting to turn. You just want to mix it up really, really good. And you're going to notice that you can obviously see the fragrance oil sticking to the inside of the jar. These aroma beads need to soak for a few days until the oil is completely absorbed. Otherwise, they'll just be a sticky mess. So just make sure that you let them sit for a few days. Some of the more thick fragrances like blueberry cobbler or leather, they are going to need less fragrance per pound of beads, and they're going to require more time to completely absorb. So just keep that in mind whenever you're making these. So I'm going to shake this up a little bit more. Alright, so everything looks like it's good and incorporated, so I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to do my other 2 colors, which we're going to have to do a little bit of a trick with these, since it's going to be such it's going to be such a light color. The salmon color that you can see here on the fish, to get that perfect color, we actually had to mix 2 of our liquid dyes together. And because we're doing so few beads at a time, we have to do a little trick to use less than 1 drop of the dye. So I'm going to measure out the 4 ounces of the aroma beads again, and this is what they look like. You can see they're just these little translucent plastic beads. But I'm going to measure out 4 ounces of those really quick. All right, 4 ounces, right on the money. And I'm gonna add that 1/4 ounce of fragrance again. Perfect. Okay, and we're going to, like I said, use 2 of our liquid dyes to get that salmon color. We have the spiced pumpkin liquid dye and the cinnamon rust. And again, because we're using so few beads, only 4 ounces of beads, a whole drop of each one of these dyes would really make the color much darker than we want it to be. So I'm gonna do a trick using, this is actually a wooden coffee stirrer or hot drink stirrer, I don't know what you want to call it. But what I'm gonna do, I don't want to get any dye on my table here, so I'm just gonna open this up on the lid. And I'm just gonna take this little coffee stirrer and put a little teeny tiny bit there on the end of it and put that in my beads. And even that, I'm not gonna use all that much. Okay, that's it for the cinnamon rust. And then I'm gonna just do the same thing for the spiced pumpkin. Just take the dropper out, just get a tiny bit on the end, and just put that into the beads. All right, and same thing here. We're just gonna put our lid on really, really well, and we're gonna start shaking it. All right, so you can see now that our beads are that nice kind of salmon-y pink color that we were looking for. So we're gonna set that one to the side and do our last one, which this is actually, we did not add any dye to this for the clear that you saw. It's just gonna be the beads and the fragrance. I'm gonna do that really quick. Okay, that one was pretty easy. Lid's on good, just gonna shake it up. Now, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to do these white or clear beads, whatever you want to call it, with every fragrance. That Desperado we picked specifically because it doesn't have like a yellowish or brown tint to it. If the fragrance oil does have a tint to it at all, and usually they range anywhere from like a pale yellow to a dark brown, then these beads are going to end up being the color of your fragrance. We don't unfortunately have any whitening powder or anything just yet for the aroma beads, so just keep that in mind, that not every fragrance is going to give you these bright white colorful beads like you see here. Okay, so the next step then is we just have to let these guys soak up. Like I said, it's going to take probably a couple of days until the fragrance is completely absorbed, but we're going to just let these sit and then we will come back to finish up. Okay, it has been a couple of days now, or a few days I should say, and as you can see, my beads are completely dry. There's not any fragrance oil that is sticking to the outside, or sorry, the inside of the container, and they're completely dry to the touch, and they smell great. Like that scent is so crazy strong. If you see my little notes on here, I did this off camera, but I just wrote the amounts of everything that I put in each of these containers, so that I could remember in case I need to, replicate my recipe or anything. I just find that doing this, helps me if I need to remember what the recipe is going to be. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to start adding our beads into the fish mold. We've got our cute little fish cookie cutter. This is actually a brand new cookie cutter that we just launched in May. And I just think he's so cute, and I think it's perfect for Father's Day. So we're going to go get our cookie sheet and parchment paper and get that all set and be right back. Okay, so I have my cookie sheet here, and I have a piece of parchment paper that I cut to fit. You do want to make sure that you use parchment paper and not wax paper. I learned the hard way that the Freshies will stick to wax paper, so make sure you use parchment paper. I've never had any issues with my Freshies sticking to this. Okay, so we are doing that gradient, and we do have to have these a little extra help just to do that. So I've got a couple of pieces of cardstock. You can see I've cut little slits into them here on the sides. Basically all we're going to do is we're just going to kind of line up in the fish here where those different colors are going to be, and that way when we remove the cardstock we'll have our 3 different colors, and it'll take a little adjusting just to get the cardstock where you need it to be. And we're going to start with that kind of salmon color in the middle first, just to make sure that everything gets evenly dispersed. And just from experience, don't try to fill up one section all the way. We're going to fill it up about halfway, and we're going to do that for each section, and then we'll go back and fill the mold up completely. So I'm going to start with the salmon color right there in the center, and I found that one of the easiest tools to use to do this is just a spoon. Don't worry if the beads scatter, you can pick them up and put them back in there. We're just going to fill this up about halfway. And you can use like maybe the end of your spoon or whatever to spread the beads out. I've actually got one of these little coffee stirrers again, and I'm just gonna kind of evenly spread them out. Need a few more beads. Okay, I know the lighting is kind of bad, but if you can see, I've got the beads in there. They're not quite filled up halfway, but it's enough that it's kind of holding the pieces of cardstock in place. So then I'm going to go ahead and just start adding my green, and the green is going to go up here at the top. This is the 2 fins at the bottom. That is the belly of the fish, so that's going to be where the clear or the white goes. All right, and then I'm going to go in with the white. Okay, so they're pretty even all the way across, but I do want to fill the mold up with the beads pretty much all the way to the top, because the beads will shrink as they melt. So now I'm going to go back and do the salmon color and fill that all the way up to the top. Okay, I'm just going to clean up these beads that have kind of fallen all over the place, and then we'll come back and we'll remove the pieces of cardstock. Okay, so I got my beads all cleaned up. My mold is completely filled, so now it's time to slowly remove the cardstock. I'm just going to take it out. Go a little bit at a time. Do this one in the front first. And don't worry if some of the beads fall out. We can always put them back. You just want to make sure that the mold doesn't come up off the cookie sheet. So just very slowly take them out. All right, we've got our perfect little gradient. I'm going to put these couple of beads that fell out back on him. Okay, so we are now going to take our little fish here to the oven, and we are going to bake this at 350 degrees, starting out with about 6-7 minutes. And I'll show you how we kind of test to see you know, if the beads are done or if they need a little bit more time. But we want to just make sure that everything is sticking together. All of these little beads have to kind of melt just enough so that they stay together. But we're going to go do that now. Okay, so we are going to be using this little smaller convection oven to melt our freshie, but any oven will work. I know some people do use these little convection ovens, so whatever you have should work fine for you. But we are setting this at 350 degrees. I've already had it preheating, and we're just going to go ahead and pop this little guy in. So I'm gonna set a timer for about 7 minutes, and then we will come back and check on it. Okay, so you can see here, I'm gonna just take the tip of my finger and touch the middle of the freshie, and if you can kind of see how the middle of it is raising up, we know that they're not quite done yet, so we're gonna put them back into the oven for another 2, maybe 3 minutes at most, and come back and check on it again. Okay, so we're just gonna test him one more time with the tip of our finger, and actually it looks like he's done. So I'm going to turn off my oven, and I'm just going to set this guy aside and let him cool. Once he's completely cool, then we will pop him out of the mold. So we'll be back. Okay, so our little fish is completely cool. You can see it's still inside of the cookie cutter. You want it just like this, where it's melted pretty solid on the bottom, but as you can see, you can still distinguish the individual beads from the front of it. So we're going to unmold this, and the easiest way to do this is actually to just kind of slowly pull the cookie cutter. You can kind of hear it starting to go, but just kind of wiggle it loose. And try not to bend your cookie cutter, but if you do bend it a little bit, you can kind of bend it back into place, but we don't want to bend it too much. I'm just going to keep wiggling it until it starts to come out. You can put these in the freezer just for a minute if you're having some trouble with it. I wouldn't do it for more than just a couple of minutes, but if you're having any trouble at all popping these out of the molds, once they're completely cool, put them in your freezer for just like a couple minutes, and it should actually help shrink the beads up just a little bit, enough that they'll release a little bit easier from the cookie cutter. But you can see my cookie cutter is still intact. If I need to squish it down to make him a little bit skinnier, that's easy enough. But there is our little fish. So in order to make him like the other one that we saw at the very beginning of the video, we're going to drill a hole at the top of the fish here and thread our string through, and I'll show you how to put the bobber on. I put my little fish on top of a cardboard box so that whenever I drill through, it doesn't mess up my table here, but I'm just going to find a good spot right there, and I'm going to just slowly drill my hole. And that's what protects my table. As you can see, I put a little hole through there though. So I'm just going to kind of slide it back and forth a couple times just to make sure that the hole is wide enough for my string. Okay. All right, perfect. So now you can see there is a little hole right there, and now we're just going to take the piece of string, or this is actually jute. We liked the little kind of rustic look for the fish, and I'm going to thread it through the hole that I drilled. And I'm just twisting the end of the jute just to make it a little bit easier to fit through the hole. Okay, so I've threaded the jute through the fish, and we need to attach our little bobber. These bobbers, at least that I have, they're pretty easy to use. You just kind of push on this little thing and you can see a hook comes through, and if you push on it like this and then push down from the bottom, you can see there is another hook up at the top. So the first thing that we're going to do is take the end of the string and tie a little knot like that, and just make sure it's nice and tight. And then I'm going to take the bottom of the bobber and I'm going to hook it right at the base of this knot. Just make sure it's through all the way so that it really hooks on well. Okay, and then don't worry about this end. We're going to clean that up in a little bit. And then we take the other end and we're going to do the same thing. Tie a little knot. And then press down on the top of the bobber and up at the top until that little hook pops out. Don't know if you can see it on camera very well. And then hook it through. And then I'm going to take my scissors and just clean up the ends here. Okay, almost done. The last part is just take the top of the string, and this is optional if you want to, but I just like how it looks with a little loop. And there is our little fish freshie. And just so you know, the way that you can hang this on your rearview mirror, you just have to undo the bottom part of the bobber. You can hook it around and then just hook the string again with the bobber and you're good to go. This is a perfect gift for Father's Day. Great, easy product to add to your store if you have one, but just thought it was something really fun. The only other thing that we're probably going to do is take our scissors and trim up these little pointy edges from the aroma beads melting, and it will be ready to go. Okay guys, we are all done. We can't wait to see everybody try this who wants to. If you end up making your own little fish freshies like this and post any pictures to social media, make sure you tag us. Our socials can be found in the comments below or at the bottom of the tutorial. So just make sure that you tag us. We'd love to see it. Thanks guys.